Everybody. Welcome to our plan sponsor education for this fall. Really excited about this one. We have Jenny Cliffmeyer from RLC, which is the Retirement Learning Center, a great partner of ours and a industry leader, along with myself. If you guys don't know or haven't met me yet, I am Tammy Kuhn. I am here with 12 Points as the Director of Compliance and Administration here for our team. So I'm super excited to offer this education to you. Hopefully it'll be exciting maybe to some of you. And then I'm going to hand it over to Jenny to kind of get us started. She'll have a couple of housekeeping items for us to run through. We are going to ask that we try to hold questions to the end, just so that we can make sure we get in that full 50 minutes that's required for anybody that's looking for that CE credit. So without further ado, we'll get this started and enjoy what we have to offer. Thanks, Jenny.
All right, thank you, Tammy, and thank you all for joining today. We're going to talk about what's going on in Washington. You know, it says Washington Pulse. Right now, the pulse is pretty dead, but there has been some activity with respect to retirement plans leading up to the government shutdown, and hopefully things will start up again here in not too long. As Tammy mentioned, for those of you who are interested in receiving continuing education credit, this webinar will provide 1 hour of CE credit. To be awarded the full credit, you must be present during the entire session, and the GoToWebinar platform will record your entry and your exit, so it needs to show that you are present for the full time. You must answer 3 polling questions during the presentation. We do have 4 questions throughout the presentation, but you only need to answer 3 in order to be able to receive credit. And if there's any questions related to the awarding of CE credits, we'll resolve that with our RLC CE administrator after the program. So our agenda today, it's pretty packed with information. We're going to look at the Department of Labor and IRS enforcement update, what the new administration's got going on related to retirement initiatives, what legislation has been proposed so far, and what industry hot topics are on the minds of those who are in the know. So let's talk about our learning objectives. So really today we want to be able to relay some practical and tactical actions and information for you that will help you better understand the Department of Labor's enforcement as well as the IRS's enforcement priorities. Understand what is going on in Washington with respect to regulations and any hot topics that you should be aware of. So let's dig into the Department of Labor and IRS enforcement update. So each year, the DOL issues a notice on their enforcement results. Now, they just wrapped up on September 30th, their 2025 fiscal year. We don't have 2025 results yet, so we're going to look at 2024 enforcement results. And they tend to be very consistent over the last couple of years. The DOL was able to recoup $1.4 billion on behalf of participants and beneficiaries. Now, I'll take just a step back to kind of put this in context. We know that ERISA, the federal law, is there to protect participants and beneficiaries' rights within retirement plans. And the Department of Labor is charged with enforcing those, and particularly the Employee Benefits Security Administration, so EBSA. And so that's the organization that was able to get the $1.4 billion back on behalf of participants. And that came about as a result of civil investigations as well as criminal investigations. And another real positive program, or 2 positive programs that help restore assets to participants are the voluntary fiduciary correction program and also the delinquent filer correction program. So those programs alone were able to recoup $544 million for participants. When we look at the number of civil cases and criminal cases, we see that when the Department of Labor examined those plans, 71% of them had something wrong, where they either had to restore losses or there were corrections that needed to be made. So that's a pretty high percentage. Where does the Department of Labor learn about these, plans, errant plans? One of the primary ways is through informal participant complaints. So I always say one way to be a great fiduciary is to just keep your participants happy, because the Department of Labor has made it very easy for participants to go onto the DOL website and log a complaint there, or pick up the phone and dial an 800 number and log a complaint directly with the Department of Labor. It goes to a regional office first, is evaluated to decide whether it should be escalated. And then if it is escalated, then the plan could be contacted for an examination. But the DOL received over 200,000 participant complaints that way. So important to keep your participants happy. And some of the key areas that the DOL is looking to enforce coming up, new areas in particular, cybersecurity, and also missing participants. We know they're putting a great deal of emphasis on that. Top DOL compliance concerns. Of course, they are focused on protecting participant benefits, and fiduciaries are held to a high standard of care and loyalty to maintain the plan for the benefit of participants and beneficiaries while paying only reasonable expenses. So DOL kind of looks at and wants to make sure fiduciaries understand their responsibilities. And if they don't, they're bringing in some expert to help them make plan decisions, or they're getting educated, because decisions made by fiduciaries for plans are held to an expert standard. So if you aren't familiar with the topic, for example, making investment decisions, that's a critical area to bring in an investment advisor or a 338 investment manager. Some of the other areas.
Also, just Jenny, real quick to that end, that's obviously where we come in. We always act as the 338 on our plans. So we always do this. And then also, in addition to the other page, I just want to say in my experience, because I handle all of the audits here, so if anybody of our clients are ever audited, I would walk you through that, is if you are audited or brought in because of a participant complaint, I can tell you that audit is far worse than if it's a random, your number comes up and we're going to audit you. So I would agree, we have to make sure that the plan is run with the best possible care, because those tend to be far worse audits in my experience than just be random. We want to come see what you got going on. So, but the good news is we can tick off a lot of your fiduciary responsibilities, and a couple other things on this list that I can say that we'll definitely strongly partner with as well.
Excellent point. Yeah, other than, the participant complaints, usually the DOL will look at 5,500 filings and see if there's errors that they see there, or if they're late, et cetera. But yeah, good
late
point.
Deposits has always been a hot one.
Yes. Yeah, they're very concerned about, of course, you're taking participants' hard-earned pay, and they want to make sure that you're depositing that as soon as administratively feasible. That is really the deadline. Now, there are some outer deadlines that apply, but if you can do it fast, that's what the expectation is of the Department of Labor. We've seen a lot of court cases on excessive fees. DOL is also concerned about bankruptcy and what happens to participants' assets. Along those same lines, abandoned plans, missing participants, making sure we can reunite participants with their the assets that they've saved. Hard to value assets, that's a topic, you know, of plans that need to pay special attention to if you have those types of investments. And then, as I mentioned earlier, cybersecurity.
Yeah, so with that, we obviously do benchmarking annually, so excessive fees is something we can usually tick off, again, from the fiduciary side of things, from our perspective and point of view, so that's great. We do enhance a cybersecurity policy as well, so we do have all of our plans do that with internal plus all of the vendors that come on board to have that. Now, I did want to ask you just really quick if you've had any experience with the new missing persons database. We're starting to get some inquiries of people like getting information out of that, and it doesn't seem to be super, I don't know, I would say accurate at times. Have you seen anything, Jenny, with those?
Yeah, the only anecdotally I've heard people say similar things, since it's right now voluntary for the information to be provided.
Right.
It's very incomplete at this point, and it really would seem that you'd have to mandate that information come in order to be a comprehensive system. So it is definitely a work in progress.
Okay, great, thanks.
Moving on to the IRS's top 10 compliance concerns. IRS is concerned with taxation and maintaining the plan's qualified status so it can take advantage of that tax favored status under the Internal Revenue Code. So number one is making sure plans are amended for current tax law changes. And as you probably have heard, we are facing a mandatory plan amendment coming up the end of next year. By December 31st of 2026, plans will have to be amended for Secure Act 1.0, 2.0, the CARES Act, and the Minors Act, a couple of other acts that have been passed in the last several years. So important with respect to the amendments is that some of the provisions are already in effect, and some of the provisions are optional. So important to keep track of what provisions the plan has already implemented, so that when it comes time to formally amend the plan document next year, you've got accurate records as to when those particular provisions went into effect. Following the plan's definition of compensation, that's always a tricky one because the plan can have several different definitions of compensation depending on the purpose. For example, if the definition of a compensation for salary deferrals, does it include bonus pay or does it exclude bonus pay? So sometimes those inconsistencies between what is in operation and what is said in the plan document can present issues. Failure to include or exclude employees. And Tammy, you were going to say something?
Yeah, let me finish that.
Oh.
Nope, I am going to chime in a minute, but nope, that wasn't me.
Okay. All right, sorry. Yeah, so plan loans is always an area that they look at. Withdrawals, satisfying RMDs, a plan has to make sure that they attempt to solve, issue RMDs when they are due, and to locate participants if they're missing, to try to get those RMDs out of the plan. And then there's always the compliance issues related to non-discrimination testing and contribution amounts. So ADP, ACP, top heavy, and the annual additions limit. That kind of rounds out the top compliance concerns.
I would not disagree with any of those. I can't say I see too much issues. I would say the biggest one is compensation. If any of you have met with me one-on-one or we've ran through due diligence for your plan, this is something that we dive into fairly deeply because this is where I traditionally find the most errors, is the wrong definition of comp being used. In addition to people not getting enrolled on time, is probably, I would say 2 and 3 are probably the top issues, I think, across the board ongoing, and by no fault of anybody's like intentional, but they're just the easiest ones I feel like to miss.
Exactly. You know, even best efforts, errors can happen. So excellent to be very
That's why
diligent.
we love EPCRS.
Yes, especially self-correction too.
That's right.
All right. Oh, here's our first quiz. So again, if you want this CE credit, you need to answer at least 3 of the polling questions. So what is the best way for plan sponsors to avoid compliance issues? Is it A, conduct annual compliance reviews? B, wait to be notified by the IRS or DOL? C, rely on the auditor to address the issues? Or D, plan sponsors are not required to monitor the plan for compliance deficiencies? And we will give you roughly 60 seconds to contemplate the options and register your responses. And the good news is that you don't have to get the question correct. You just have to answer it and show that you're engaging in the presentation. So we'll give it just a few more seconds, I believe, and I think we'll see the result pop up here. I always want to add in the Jeopardy do 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 do. It's just to break up the because nobody likes dead airspace. All right. Do we? Is a poll there? I think the poll is closed,
Well,
and
I would super hope this one was fairly obvious.
yes, right. Yes, always conduct annual compliance review.
The results don't automatically pop up, but I can share them with you if you'd like. So 100% that voted
Good
for
job.
the correct answer.
All right. Whoops, so we'll move on now to our next segment on the administration's retirement-related initiatives. And right off the bat, when President Trump took office, he moved toward a broad shift of deregulation. Right away, he issued a regulatory freeze for 60 days. So any recently released regulations did not go into effect for 60 days. Followed by that, he issued a 10-to-1 deregulation order. And then finally issued a request to have all of the agencies review the rules and regulations to determine if there's been overreach. As a result of this, we expect that we're going to see some rollback or amendments of several retirement-related regulations. Now, looking at the deregulation order, that one in particular requires that for every new regulation proposed, at least 10 outdated or inefficient rules have to be removed. And just to kind of put that into perspective, for 2023, the DOL issued at least three regulations. We had the fiduciary regulations, the ESG regulations, and some reporting and disclosure regulations. With those 3 regulations, that meant that 30 outdated rules will have to be eliminated. So it's really a paring back of regulatory authority that is starting to happen. The executive order was also to help try to identify where government is overreaching, where some of these agencies are overstepping their bounds and making it too difficult in the end for plan sponsors to maintain plans. It's not like they want to make it be able to just do anything, but they want to make it easier for plan sponsors to have safe harbors to maintain their plans and stay within guidelines that aren't over restrictive. So what do we think will happen with some of the regulations? We know for sure, based on, I shouldn't say for sure, but we know based on the DOL's regulatory agenda that they will be issuing modified regulations for the fiduciary investment advice rules in 2026. We also know that ESG rule, the environmental social governance regulation, will be replaced in 2026 as well. Also, cryptocurrency and alternative assets in plans are being seen in a much more favorable light. So we'll probably see relaxed regulations related to those two topics. And ESOPs, a very positive feeling towards ESOPs. And so we anticipate some new regulations that will expand the ability to offer ESOPs.
Yeah, that one's kind of surprising because I feel like ESOPs are a dying breed.
Yeah, I think
That
you
one's
know,
kind of surprising to me. It just doesn't seem to be much by way of ESOPs in the market, not what it used to be anyway. People are freezing them and getting rid of them. I haven't seen much movement. So that one doesn't surprise me.
It will be interesting to see. You know, I think it's encouraging the small business owners and also exit strategies for business owners that, you know, ESOPs can be very helpful in those scenarios.
Yeah, and the alternative investment definitely is a hot topic. Definitely in our side of the business, right? It has been for quite some time, so we'll be really interested to kind of see where that falls too.
Yeah,
I have some concerns whether or not that is going to follow some of the #1 rules for us, and that is prudent. How can you be prudent and put cryptocurrency in your plan?
Exactly.
We're gonna, but we'll get there.
Yeah, we're going to dig into that point later. So that perfect lead in. And here's just this, I'm not going to go through this slide in much detail, but it's just to demonstrate how the fiduciary advice rules have had a long and winding path. And we're still, you know, trying to figure out what it's going to be for 2025 and going forward. Right now, as things stand, you know, for investment advice fiduciaries, we still have the 5-part test. If they meet all 5 parts of the test and they're giving advice, they have to follow some kind of a prohibited transaction exemption that's making sure that actions are in the best interest of participants. So
yeah,
more to come on that.
This is why you outsource this. This is why you don't talk about it.
Yes, exactly, yes. ESG rules, as I mentioned, we expect those in 2026. We do anticipate it's going to go back to the prior Trump administration, which really focused on pecuniary issues, which really means just the financial prudency of an investment, an ESG investment, you know, looking at the risk and reward factors. Some of the things, if you are a sponsor or know of someone who is interested or considering ESG funds in their plans, there's a lot of it, you know, of it up in the air yet. So I wouldn't rush necessarily to embrace ESG investments. That said, it's certainly possible that an ESG investment could be a great investment for a plan. But what the committee and the sponsor would need to do is make sure they have a clear definition of what constitutes an ESG fund. And that's probably the biggest concern in the industry right now, is we just don't have a clear definition of what is an ESG. I've heard of stories of you know, funds just changing the name by adding in some kind of, you know, green name and calling it an ESG fund, and it's no different than it was before, except in name. So just to be very careful about what it is that you're evaluating. Does the ESG fund meet the prudent, you know, standard for being offered in a plan, and how are you going to monitor it? So and also addressing it in the IPS if it's something that you as a plan and committee decide you'd like to have.
Yeah, something interesting, I think I told you, Jenny, before when I was in Washington back in July, just some conversations around this. A couple of points from the leaders in the retirement plan industry were also pointing out, if your company has a true ESG philosophy, like this is part of your core, then you're more apt to kind of fall in line with offering this type of product rather than somebody just says, hey, I think we should do this because it looks good, right?
Right.
But if you at your core as a company truly follow and believe in ESG, then that might be a good alternative for you because you can kind of prove what you're saying, right? Like, we believe in it, this is how we operate. So
Exactly.
I thought
Yeah,
that was an interesting point they were bringing up.
that is, yes, that's excellent point. Along the same lines, we've got new directives on alternative assets. And so what we had a rescission of a compliance release, number one on cryptocurrency. Early on, the DOL said, you know, they took the stance that, oh, you should use extreme caution before adding cryptocurrency to the 401k plan. That has been changed. The new compliance release takes a very neutral stance. It's cryptocurrency is neither good nor bad. It's just, is it a prudent investment for the plan? We also have an executive order democratizing access to alternative assets for 401ks. And what the executive order is doing here is really wanting the DOL, the SEC, any other agencies to really clear the way for 401k plans in particular to offer alternative assets, in particular as part of maybe an allocation fund, maybe a target date or a balanced or managed fund, et cetera. So what needs to happen is, you know, there's the agencies, DOL, SEC, need to take a look at what rules, regs they need to change, and in order to make it more the pathway easier if a plan would like to include alternative assets in its lineup. Here again, because we are anticipating some regulations to come out within, I think, maybe as soon as the end of the year, but definitely in 2026, that will give us more guidance on this and possibly a safe harbor. I think we're seeing a lot of sponsors just kind of taking a wait and see approach to see what kind of, number one, what kind of safe harbors there may be and what kind of, you know, product developments might occur as a result of this. All right, well, we have our second polling question, and this time our question is, which of the following statements is true? A, the DOL forbids cryptocurrency as a plan investment. B, the DOL forbids ESG funds as a plan investment. C, the DOL forbids alternative assets as plan investments. Or D, the plan sponsor must prudently select investment alternatives for their plans that are in the best interest of participants. So we'll pause again for a few moments to have you contemplate and consider the options and make your selections. Again, very important to answer at least 3 of the polling questions to receive the CE credit. And, you know, in past webinars, sometimes we've had folks say, oh, I didn't have time to answer. So that's why we're giving, you know, ample time to be able to register your response. Just a few more moments. There's one statement that is true among these 4. And the answer is D, the plan sponsors must prudently select investment alternatives for their plans that are in the best interest of participants. How did our polling audience do?
Pretty good, 86%.
Nice, all right, good job. All right, let's move on now to some Secure 2.0 provisions that are taking effect in 2025. You know, that is the gift that keeps on giving. We had Secure 1.0, 2.0, and we've had effective dates scattered throughout the last few years and actually go through 2033. So for 2025, the important effective provisions include the mandatory automatic enrollment. So that's any new 401k or 403b plans established on or after December 29th of 2022 have to include an automatic enrollment feature. And so any new plans, that's a must-have. There are some plans that were grandfathered in, also some plans that are exempt from the requirement. And so if you are a business with 10 or fewer employees, or the business is in existence for less than 3 years, a church plan or a government plan, then you are exempt from that requirement. We also have higher catch-up limits for retirement plans.
So with that, Jenny, the only thing that I think wasn't super clear in some new clients, where I got some fielded questions, maybe didn't understand, is that yes, you can be exempt if you have fewer than 10, but as soon as you hit 10, you got to add it.
Yeah,
So it's almost a catch-22. Do you just go ahead and add it thinking, hey, I'm at 5, I'm probably going to hit 10, I'm going to have to add it next year, you know, versus just adding it right out of the gate. I tend to default to just adding it on new plans if we think the growth is going to get us there, because sometimes it's harder to add that a year down the line than just adding it out of the gate. So I felt like that was one area that maybe people didn't understand. They thought that was an exemption across the board. If they had fewer than 10.
Yeah. Good point. And that's really, you know, being proactive, looking ahead to, you know, most businesses hopefully are growing, and that way you can address it early on.
Yeah, and I think we may have something with the slides because we're still sitting on the quick poll.
Okay, because I moved on to the secure provisions. Can you see those yet? I know the poll had to be closed before the sharing would continue.
Yeah, it is closed. Jenny, I don't know if you can try to just stop sharing and resharing.
Okay, I will try. I will give that a try.
Yep.
There we go.
All right. Always start and restart is always a good IT fix. All right, higher catch-up contribution limits for those age 60, 61, 62, and 63. So those are inactive, or it started this year for retirement plans. That means, you know, for the age 50 is our, you know, $7,500 catch-up. If you're the 60, 61, 62, or 63, you could put up to $11,250 in for catch-up contributions. So that's a nice little perk for those in that age group. Long-term part-time employee eligibility rules. We got those rules with the first Secure 1.0, but it was that if the participant had 3 years in which they had the 500 or more hours of service, then they would be eligible. Secure 2.0 changed that 3-year requirement to 2 years. So for eligibility in 2025, we would look back at 2024 and 2023 to determine eligibility for the long-term part-time employees. We're still waiting on the DOL to come up with its benchmarking.
Sorry.
Yeah.
The one on the higher catch-ups that I didn't understand is why it stopped at 63, because very early on in some of the adopters, I thought they were going to go to 65, right? Like that made more sense. I'm not really sure why it stopped at 63. Did you ever hear like why they backed off those last couple of years?
No, then it's very interesting because if, when Secure 2.0 was being enacted, there, you know, there were the 2 bills that were side by side. One had it age up to 64, and then 65 would be back. And then, but the Senate version, I believe, had the aged 63. So
right, I just wasn't sure why. Anyway, I thought that was kind of interesting. So I have people that are like, hey, that's age discrimination. Why do we lose out? We're 64.
Yeah.
Is a really good point about that, because I get this question quite a bit. Is it does work just like catch up at any point. If somebody turns 63, they don't have to stop immediately. They can finish out that year in which they finish the year at 63. So don't think like somebody turned 63 in June and they got to stop. They can finish out that year.
Yes.
And I will say on the long-term part-time, that is the craziest thing that I ever seen come out, and probably one of the hardest things to track. This has been probably one of the most challenging parts, honestly, is tracking this, because no record keeper is tracking it for most plan sponsors. So this is pretty difficult.
Right. I think it's making more plan sponsors consider elapsed time
Yeah, right.
versus counting hours. But yeah, just briefly on the benchmarking, we're waiting for that information so we can have guidance there. And then another option is a plan can allow a distribution of up to $2,500 per year to help pay for long-term care insurance contracts, and it can avoid the 10% penalty, early distribution penalty. Looking ahead to 2026, here is the bane of everyone's existence.
The worst.
The worst, the almost impossible to implement mandate that catch-up contributions, if you're a high income participant, must be Roth catch-up contributions starting in 2026. We did just get final regulations that gave us a little more guidance, but still does not get at the heart of how difficult this is to coordinate with payroll providers, record keepers, and TPAs in tracking that that $145,000 FICA wages in the prior year. So there's at least we've got for this year a good faith, if a plan is in good faith trying to follow the statutory description, they're going to be fine. The regulations won't be enforced until next year, and we certainly hope by then we'll have better guidance, just practical implication guidance.
Yeah, and the slide didn't advance, so you're still on 25. But a couple of things, yeah, this has probably been one of the harder ones to explain, and any of our clients on the phone know that I've probably beaten this with a dead horse over the last year, trying to figure out the best way to track this, to implement this, to look at it. The one thing to mention, a lot of people interpreted those final regs as a delay, and it is not a delay. They are still expecting it to start. They're just saying they're not going to come smack your hand if we have to correct it in some way in 26. So we're just not going to get penalized. That's it. It is not a delay though. So I saw several posts about people talking like this was delayed, and it is not a delay.
Right. So you really do need to be taking steps to comply this year. But just as Tammy said, they'll show some leniency this year, but next year maybe not so much.
Yeah, so the slides aren't moving.
Are we on plan amendments now?
No, we didn't even see the effective 2026 provision.
Let's see. I'll try the stop and start again here. Did that work?
Yes.
Okay, good. Plan amendments. As a result of all those law changes, we do have plan amendments, as I mentioned, December 26th of 2026. I'm sorry, slow down. December 31st of 2026. There we go. For most plans, there are some delays for collectively bargained plans and for public schools and governmental entities, but for all intents and purposes, we have to look at next year. And again, the important thing really, as these various optional provisions have become available through the years, to make note of when they were implemented. So we've got documentation. So when it comes time to execute the plan document amendments, you can execute them correctly so that plan operations will match what the document says.
Yeah, and this is important, but we have also been, just for any of our clients, been keeping like a checklist, like we have a little spreadsheet checklist. So a lot of these record keepers and vendors, right, are just doing a default election on these. So they're sending
Yes.
something out and saying we're electing it unless you tell us you don't want it. And in most cases, that's the case, and they're not really signing off on anything like right now. They're just kind of grabbing the wish list. So we kind of enacted our own little checklist to make sure what people have at least negatively, adopted or proactively adopted, since there's no real signatures required yet.
Right, right. And that's extremely important to, not just get the amendment package and go ahead and assume everything is right.
Sure.
Because the defaults may not be what you're using. So very important to take time to review those. IRAs also are due to be amended at the same time frame. We're on to our third polling question. This time, sponsors must amend their qualified plan documents for various law changes by A, December 31st of 2025, B, December 31st of 2026, C, the end of the 2025 plan year, or D, amendments are not required. So here again, we'll take a moment to allow you to contemplate and select your decision as to when or if plan documents need to be amended. We'll give just a few more moments so everyone has a good opportunity to respond. All right, and I'm hoping my slides will advance again after we're done here. And the correct answer is December 31st of 2026.
100% of folks answered that answer.
All right, very good. Now, are you seeing legislation related to retirement plans? Next slide. Okay, good. All right, so let's move on to some proposals in Congress, some bills that have been presented. Well, we know one. This one actually was enacted into law, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act that was signed on the 4th of July. It really did not have very impactful provisions related to retirement plans. However, it did introduce kind of a new account called the Trump accounts for children. And these are kind of quasi-IRA type plans. They can be set up for a child up through the end of their 17th year of age. They have to be US citizens. The government will give a one-time $1,000 contribution for anyone setting it up in between 2025 and 2028. But the annual contribution limit is low, $5,000. But there are other organizations can contribute as well to the Trump accounts. I did a little digging to see if I could see popularity, and I just couldn't come up with any numbers yet. I don't know that it's going to take off, but it's another option for helping kids start saving early for retirement. Next, we've got the Retirement Fairness for Charities and Education Institution Act of 2025. This would be a bill, if enacted, would allow 403B plans to invest in CITs, or collective investment trusts. 401k plans have been able to do that for years. 403B plans have not. There's lots of bipartisan support for this bill, actually identical bills in the House and Senate. And hopefully there'll be some action once again government starts back up and running. We also have the Retirement Savings Act for Retirement Savings for Americans Act. This was reintroduced. This would create a government-sponsored retirement plan called the American Worker Retirement Plan. And so it is aimed at giving access to individuals, workers who don't have access to traditional retirement plans in the workforce. Kind of similar, to the state-sponsored plans a lot of states have been adopting. Again, this would be for if an employer doesn't offer a plan, participants or employees could take part in this. Automatic enrollment, government would provide some matching contributions. Investments would be similar to those that are in the government thrift savings plan. This is kind of not received a lot of support, but it's been introduced twice now, so it might be something that's percolating in the background.
Yeah, this definitely came up in Washington in July because
Okay.
us as an industry we're not in super favor of this bill. We
Right.
feel like there's huge gaps in that and not getting employee education, what this would do to the private sector of that, because what if an employer says, I'm just going to cancel my plan then and let you go to the government plan? There's lots of holes in this. So
Yes.
we have definitely lobbied against this twice now. So
Yeah.
we're hopeful
Yeah.
this one doesn't make it, at least on the face of as it is now.
Yeah, agree. And then we have another proposal, Helping Young Americans Save for Retirement Act. This one has bipartisan support. It really would be allowing workers as young as 18 to participate in 401k plans, so dropping that age 21 limit to 18. And by doing that, they take advantage of some, they wouldn't have to apply the non-discrimination rules, top-heavy rules, and those young employees would not count towards the audit requirement for 100, if they have 100 participants. So again, we'll see what happens with that. And then early on, we had the president's 2025 budget proposal. Haven't heard much about that for a long time, but in that, initially, there was a provision that would limit high-income taxpayers how much they could accumulate in their retirement accounts, and also maybe doing away with backdoor Roth IRA conversions. But again, this one is been kind of silent, so I don't anticipate anything from this coming to fruition. All right, we're at our last polling question, I believe. True or false? Some provisions of Secure 2.0 took effect immediately. Is it A, true, or B, false?
Just a point on that previous slide why we're letting them kind of go is, the backdoor Roth, even in 401k plans, has been kind of hidden in a number of bills. It seems like that they've tried a few times to eliminate that capability, and it hasn't made it through. So we'll see how many more times they're going to try to eliminate backdoor Roth.
Exactly. Yeah. It's interesting if something keeps being reproposed year after year after year. Eventually, it'll take some shape or form. One would think. So we'll see. But that's a pretty popular feature and option for plan participants right now. All right, on our last polling question, true or false, some provisions of Secure 2.0 took effect immediately. Our answer is true. And how did our polling audience do?
You're 100% correct once again.
All right, they are paying attention. Thank you. So let's move on to some industry hot topics. Are you seeing this slide, ERISA litigation reform?
Yep.
Okay, good. So we've got a new leader for the EBSA agency, the Employee Benefits Security Administration, part of the Department of Labor, and that's Daniel Aronowitz. And he is coming in with the stance that he is anti plan sponsor lawsuits. He's tired of these frivolous lawsuits that are dragging plan sponsors through the courts. And so he's on a mission to really reduce frivolous litigation. He was president of a fiduciary liability insurance firm, so he appreciates the fact that, you know, plan sponsors, you know, have fiduciary liability, and you know, one of the risk mitigation factors they can take part in is buying fiduciary liability insurance in addition to the required ERISA fidelity bond. But anyway, we should see less litigation under Mr. Arnowitz's leadership. However, we did have a Supreme Court decision in Cunningham versus Cornell. And the result of this Supreme Court decision could lead to more plan participant cases, and making it easier for plaintiffs to bring their case and have their case heard. So what the decision did in the Cunningham versus Cornell, here's kind of the steps that generally a lawsuit has to flow through. And so first is the complaint is filed, then there's a motion to dismiss. Most cases would have been dismissed on that second step. But what the Supreme Court ruling did was change that so that the plaintiff doesn't have to address any kind of affirmative defenses that the sponsor might have, like our plan fees are reasonable. No, the plaintiff just has to assert that the plan has unreasonable fees, and then it can pass through the motion to dismiss. So it's going to make it easier for cases to move on through the process and at least hit the discovery stage to gather more evidence and support about whether or not the fees were actually reasonable for the plan. So as a result, we do think there may be down the road, this isn't overnight, but down the road, we may see more cases presented that will challenge, you know, plan sponsor fees or cybersecurity or whatever. We also had seen a real uptick in forfeiture litigation. And to me, this was kind of at first like, why on earth forfeiture litigation? Because it's very clear in plan documents that you can use forfeitures to pay plan expenses, to reduce contributions, or reduce employer contributions. So what the lawsuits focus on is whether the employer has discretion on the decision as to how to use forfeitures. If the plan has some discretion and decides, you know, how it will use forfeitures, that's when it can run afoul of you know, the courts. But most courts and regulators have upheld the long-standing practice that forfeitures can be used to offset employer contributions as long as the plan document allows it, and there really isn't, you know, the employer isn't just picking that of their own volition. So important to review your forfeiture language in the plan document to make sure all of three of the options are available and clearly what should apply in operation of the plan. Cybersecurity is a hot topic. We know that plan sponsors must protect participant information that is in the regulations, but we don't have any formal federal guidelines. We do have some best practices from the Department of Labor. So there are some tips for hiring a service provider, cybersecurity program best practices, and online security tips for plan participants. And interestingly enough, the weakest link in cybersecurity breaches are plan participants. You know, we are our own worst enemies because we don't change our passwords. We reuse them and we, you know, give them to other people, and so it's very important for participants to play an active role in protecting their identity. And Tammy, you mentioned that you're assisting with cybersecurity issues.
Right. It's just one of our policy. I mean, we put several policies in place just because of recent audits and all of this happening. But we have a cybersecurity policy where we adopt it, and each record keeper, because they're required to give it to the Department of Labor, right? Their whole cybersecurity policy, they have to do that. So it's just grabbing and making sure that their cybersecurity policy is up to date. So we look at that annually in conjunction with kind of looking at their SOC 2s, because it's mentioned in their SOC 2s as well.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just important to follow the guidelines and best practices the Department of Labor has put forth. I anticipate we will have some regulations coming down the road. In-plan lifetime retirement income solutions. We know participants like the idea. Sponsors are a bit hesitant yet because of concerned about complexity, higher fees, etc. So whether or not you want to include a lifetime retirement income solution in the plan is something that committee and sponsors should consider. And again, it comes down to, would this be in the best interest of plan participants to have this? Some other questions to consider is, could they obtain this retirement income product outside of the plan at a cheaper rate? What does your plan document say? Does it permit retirement income products? And evaluate your investment policy statement as well. We talked about the opportunity for alternative investments. Right now, because a lot of things are up in the air and we do anticipate some regulations, plans are taking a wait and see approach. So we want to make sure, that we evaluate carefully. Again, it all comes back to the fiduciary duty to prudently select investment options that are in the best interest of participants. And one little tidbit from Secure Act, keep in mind the Secure Act changed the controlled group rules for husband and wife in particular, in that they now do not, in community property states, don't require a husband and wife to be treated, as owning each other's share. And so each spouse in a community property state like California is considered to own separately their shares and have separate plans that aren't tested together then. These last couple of slides are just for your reference purposes. And so in conclusion, enforcement is going to remain a top priority, but we've had budget cuts. So personnel cuts mean that there will be fewer audits and examinations. We're going to see shifting to deregulation and reduced litigation. We've got our Secure Act provisions that are taking effect, and that Roth mandatory catch-up is a bugger. And then hot topics, use of forfeitures, cybersecurity, lifetime income solutions, and then alternative assets. So we'll take a moment for some questions. Do we have any questions in the chat or any additional comments that you'd like to share?
Not seeing any questions yet.
Okay. Yeah, of course, we've got to get the government funded again before anything new will happen. But I did see a number of IRS personnel were furloughed today. So that will slow down activity with the IRS. In fact, I think I heard that could affect whether or not we'll see the COLA announcement on what contribution limits will be for next year, just because of what's going on right now with the slowdown or the shutdown.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any additional questions in the chat.
All right, well, thank you very much for attending, and Tammy, I'll let you, have
Yeah,
the closing
and
remarks.
if anybody has any follow-up questions that maybe you didn't get a chance to, answer, or have anything that came out of this that you would like to follow up on, you guys are certainly welcome to reach out to me here at 12 Points. And then we'll, kind of direct and see if there's questions that I need to follow up with Jenny on, but certainly feel free to reach out if you guys have any additional questions out of this. And I'm glad everybody could attend. Thanks for attending.
All right, thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.